In this video, you will learn how to build a table to seat 4. This project will require more time for execution. The tools you will need are a pencil, a marking knife, a punch, a marking gauge, a mortise gauge, a measuring tape, a file, a ruler, chisels, a tri-square, masking tape, 10 cm screws, clamps, a brush, sandpaper, hand planes, a mallet, a hammer, a handsaw, a router, a circular saw, a power drill, and a random orbital sander. The materials you will need are 4 pieces of wood for the legs of the dimensions 7.6 by 7.6 by 76.2 centimeters, 4 pieces for the aprons of the dimensions 3.8 by 12.7 by 114.3 centimeters, and 9 pieces for the slats of the dimensions 2.5 by 10.1 by 127 centimeters. You will also need adhesive, sealer, and thinner. Remember to purchase more wood than required to make up for possible errors. The 5 key steps are cutting the legs, cutting the aprons, making the tenons, making the mortises, and assembling the frame. Step 1. Cutting the legs. This table shall be made using the mortise and tenon joint held together with square pegs. For more information, refer to the video How to make a mortise and tenon joint. Start by making the best sides of each leg that will be visible once the table is assembled. Bring the legs together as shown and measure the length of the timber to decide the height of the table. Here, we have marked 1 cm from either end to cut the 76 cm pieces down to 74 cm for the legs. Extend the 1 cm marks to all sides. Now, proceed to saw the legs down to length. Step 2. Cutting the aprons. Mark the visible sides of the aprons. Bring them together as shown. Now, place a leg on either end across the aprons to set the final width of the table. Here we have taken 91.5 centimeters between the outer edges of the legs. Mark the shoulders of the tenon at either end by drawing a line across the pieces along the inner edges of the legs. Measure 4 centimeters outside the shoulders to mark the ends of both tenons. Extend the lines to all sides of each apron. Saw the aprons along the lines, marking the end of each tenon. Step 3. Making the tenons. Measure the thickness of the apron and mark the cheek of the tenon using a mortise gauge. Here we shall remove 1 centimeter from either side. Set the depth of the router bit to the line, marking the cheek of the tenon. And proceed to cut the tenons on all the aprons. Use a chisel to perfect the sides and corners. Mark the required width of the tenon. Here we shall remove 2 centimeters from the narrow side of the apron that will not be visible, using the router. Refine the tenon with a chisel. Step 4. Making the mortises. Now, place the tenon on the leg, as shown, to mark the width of the mortise on the 2 sides that will not be visible. With the mortise gauge still set to the tenon, scribe the thickness of the mortise. Clear the mortise to the depth allowed by the router bit. You can also use a drill instead of a router. Clear the remaining material with a chisel and mallet. Keep checking to make sure that the depth of the mortise is set to the height of the tenon. Once it is complete, ensure that they join at a right angle. Use a T-bar clamp to hold 2 legs to an apron as shown. And check if the corners are square. Step 5. Assembling the frame. As you can see, this table will measure 91.5 centimeters on each side. Take some scrap wood and cut out square pegs using a chisel, as shown. Make one tip of each peg narrower so that they can be hammered into holes drilled through the joints. Before drilling the peg holes, apply adhesive in the joints and clamp the pieces together. Mark a point 1.5 centimeters from the inside edge of the leg and 1 centimeter from the bottom edge of the apron. Mark a second point 3 centimeters from the inside edge of the apron and 3 centimeters from the top of the leg. Punch the points and proceed to drill holes for the pegs. Hammer a peg into each hole and saw off the protruding section. Do the same for the opposite side of the table. Turn the pieces over and glue 2 more aprons as shown. Now attach the opposite side of the table to complete the frame. Clamp the frame and check if the corners are square. Drill the peg holes as done before. Proceed to insert the pegs to complete the frame. Plane the top surface of the frame and make sure it is flat at the joints. Now that the frame is ready, you can start working on the slats for the surface of the table. For the 2 remaining steps, continue watching How to Make a Table Part 2.